Hey, what's up guys, Alex here, thank you for checking this video. Welcome to another episode on how to build a WordPress plugin from scratch. In this tutorial, we're going to take a look on how to delete our custom post types, because it's not actually that simple, it's not actually that linear. So WordPress by default, for what I know, and it's the day of this recording, doesn't come with any option to actually automatically delete a record inside an array, inside a custom option, inside the WP options table. By default, WordPress for the options API offers 3 methods, and we already saw basically 2 of them, and we're constantly using these 2, the get option, the update option, and then there's a third method that is simply called delete option. And the delete option basically completely deletes whatever we're saving in our database and it completely deletes the record. We actually don't need that. We don't want to completely delete the option just if a user wants to delete one single post type. What we want to do, we want to delete just one single record in our full array of custom post types. And unfortunately, WordPress doesn't offer any built-in API or any built-in method to just erase that one. But let me show you my personal method on how I like it to structure and how I like it to handle it. So you could do this in many different ways. You could create another custom page, you could create an AJAX request, you could use the REST API, you could do a regular post or GET request, you could even manually write a raw query to update the database with the WPDB. But all those methods are kind of like too complicated, all over the top, are kind of like too big for the purpose of this. It's just deleting one single record in our array. And because I'm lazy and because I don't want to write a lot of custom stuff, I always try to find a solution that reuses the code that I already have and tries to reuse as much as possible the built-in methods of WordPress in order to tap all those built-in sanitization options, security options, and validations, and all those kind of stuff that I really like. So let me show you how I like to do these things. First, let's open the templates and the cpt.php where we have our list of custom post types. Here for the delete, instead of using a simple link that triggers whatever thing, I'm gonna actually submit a form. And the type of form that I want to submit, it's basically identical to the form that I'm submitted to actually add an option. So I can point to the options.php, call the same settings field, and then the submit button, but not passing any option, any field of my custom post type generation form. So it probably sounds a little bit complicated, but let me show you why I want to do this. So first, let's copy this form and let's paste it here instead of the delete stuff. Let's completely remove the A tag and let's cut also the TD and TR closing tags into another echo here. So let's move it in here. So now we have this PHP empty space that we can do whatever we want. And first, let's echo the form that we're pasting, and then let's close that form. Of course, let's copy the closing tag and let's put it here. And here let's paste, or let's copy the settings field in the submit button. That's it. I just want these 2, and it's gonna look super weird, but we're gonna update it in a bit. But let me show you why I'm doing this. So let's save it. Let's go back in our administration area. Let's refresh. Now we have this situation where we have the form that we pasted in here. We asking WordPress to generate the custom post type form settings that we're using in this section to actually generate a custom post type, but we're using it here completely empty without any input field. But because we are using the settings field here, the settings field's built-in method, we're automatically accessing all these input hiddens that are pointing to the correct option page, are pointing to the correct action. It's passing the WP nonce that it's necessary for validation, and we have also our callback that it redirects to this very own page. So we have all these stuff that are built in by WordPress and makes our life way easier. So first, let's update this button. Instead of save changes, let's update it with just writing delete. And we can do that by using the built-in methods and options and arguments of the submit button. The first argument that we can pass is the actual text that we want to print in the button, and in my case is delete. The second option is the list of classes, and if you pass delete as a class, automatically WordPress will update the button to have a secondary type of style. So if we update this, we save it, we go back in the admin area, we refresh. Now we have our delete that has a secondary class. We have the name of the button that it's actually deleted, it's not anymore saved changes. So let's keep styling. I want these to be inline, so I don't want these p tag because I don't really like it, and I want these to be smaller. So let's add a secondary class called small, and this is also another class of WordPress. The third parameter is the type of button that we want to use, and by default it's submit, so we want to leave it as submit because we want to give this button the ability to actually submit this form. The fourth parameter is the wrapper, and the wrapper handles the generation of whatever HTML is going to be around this button. It's going to wrap this button around, and by default WordPress generates this p tag, this paragraph. We don't want this because it creates this massive spacing that we don't really use it. We want everything in line. So let's specify as a fourth parameter a boolean false. That means we don't want any wrapper. That's perfect. Let's save it. Let's go back here. Let's refresh. And now everything is smaller, it's tidier, and it makes sense. Of course, it's not in line because we have the form that is not in line as well, but we can change this by creating a simple class. So let's give a class to this form called inline block, and let's generate this class in our SCSS modules, and we can create a new file in the modules called form.scss. And in the my style, we can import the modules form, and we can write here the class inline block and give it this display inline block. Perfect. Of course, because we're using SCSS or SAS, let's remember to trigger our gulp watch in our base plugin directory. And if you don't know anything about Gulp, I strongly suggest you to check the Gulp from Scratch tutorial series. It's a really short series that handles pretty much everything that you need to know about Gulp in order to have some automation in your daily workflow. Perfect. Now, if we save this, automatically the new style will be generated and we can go back safely here. Let's refresh. And now the form is in line. That's awesome. Let's give it, of course, a little bit of space to this thing, just an empty blank space, just to not have these two things attached. Wonderful. We could potentially change this edit and do the same and use the button, but for now, let's leave it at that. We just want to deal with the delete. So now that we did this and we're using the same settings fields, we're pointing to the same options, and we're just submitting this thing, if we do this because we're using the same settings field, automatically it's going to happen the same thing that it happens when we submit a custom post type form to add a new custom post type. It's going to point and redirect to our callback CPT sanitize, and the CPT sanitize only adds whatever new post type we're generating to the pre-existing list array of our custom post types. We don't want to do that because if we actually click on these delete, we're going to submit an empty form. So we don't have anything. And if we don't have anything in this input, this operation will simply add an empty or null space, just an empty array to the list of array. We don't want that. So let me show you what we can do. First, let's var dump the input that we're passing in the sanitization, and then let's interrupt the script with the die. Let's go back in our administration area. If we refresh, now everything is okay. If we click delete, we go into the options.php and we are printing here. This is super small. Let me increase it. We are interrupting the script at CPT callbacks on line 17, where we are var dumping the input field. But of course, the input field is completely null because we don't have any field inside the form that we're passing with the delete button. We're submitting with the delete button. But what if instead of trying to access the input that comes with all the information inside the form, we try to access the post request, the built-in post request of PHP that comes when a form is getting submitted via post request, because if we access the form, the method is post. So inside, we should have all these hidden fields that we can tap with the built-in PHP post request. So $_post, all uppercase. Let's save it. Let's go back here. Let's go back in the admin area. Oh, this is gigantic. Let's refresh. Okay, click again, delete. There you go. Look what we have here. We have a bunch of information that before we didn't have, but we have all the fields that are inside that form, but are not visible. They're whole hidden fields. We know we have the options page, the actions, nonsense, blah, blah, blah. So now that we know we can access the post request, the HTTP post request, we can pass an hidden, unique value in order to identify which custom post type we want to delete from that array. And to do that, it's really, really simple. Let's go back in our cpt.php template, and here, just right before the submit button, or you can put it also after the submit, as far as it's inside the form, we can simply echo an input field that has a type of hidden. The name of the input is remove, and the value of this input is actually the custom post type ID, the unique post type ID that we want to remove, and we can copy it from here. So let's copy this and let's paste it with the old-fashioned way by interrupting the echo and concatenating with periods. There you go. This is really, really bad looking, but it's really simple. It's just an example. You can restructure this section however you want and make it look as pretty as you want. But now that we have this hidden input field, if we save it, we go back in the administration area, we go back, of course, we refresh. Now in the list of form here, the delete, we have this hidden input field. There you go, here, called remove, that has the value of comic book that is exactly identical to the ID of this row of the post type ID. And of course, if we analyze these other form request, the remove, it's equal to product, that is this custom post type ID. So now if we click on delete, we're gonna, yes, still see the var dump of the post request, but in the var dump of the post request, now we have the remove hidden post field with the string of comic book. And this is what we need to check if we want to remove whatever custom post type we want from that list of arrays. So let's do it. Now that we have this data, we can do a really simple and linear if statement in this sanitization. And we can say that if is set. So if this post request is set, and the post request that we want to check that if is set is not false, is the post value of the input field called remove. If this is set, it means we are submitting the same form, but we want to actually remove. We want to remove action. So if this is set, only if this is set, we can use a built-in method of PHP to delete a specific record from an array. And the PHP method is called unset. And in the unset, we need to pass the array and then specify which key we want to remove. And by specifying the key, automatically the unset will remove both keys and values of that specific group of array. Of course, our array that we want to tap is the output. So these output get options should be before this if statement. This is the first value that we need to tap, and we need, it doesn't matter how many sanitization, validation, if statement conditions we do, this is the first value that we should get, the full list of array options that we stored. So now we can unset from the option only the key by opening and closing the square brackets that is stored inside the post request remove. Because here we're passing, for example, comic book. And if we access our database and in the WP options, we check the value of our AliCap plugin CPT, you know that here, yes, we have a couple of arrays, but every single array has a key and then a value that it's another array that handles all the information of the custom post type. And the key is the unique name of the post type, so comic book or product. So by saying unset the key comic book, automatically we're going to remove and unset from this array the full key value match that handles the comic book and all the information of the custom post type. Does it make sense? Let's give it a try. Let's save this. Before concluding though, if we have a remove post request, we don't want to then save a new post type. This doesn't make sense. So the thing that we can do, we can simply interrupt the execution of whatever comes after this if statement, if the if statement is true, and return the output. That is the same thing that we're returning here. If this statement is true, let's return the output. Otherwise, at the end, let's return the output. But if we want to just remove it, let's return this. Save it. Let's go back in our administration area. Let's go back in the admin option, CPT manager. Let's refresh. Okay, now it's time to actually delete our comic book post type. Let's delete this. Oh, is not working. Why? Oops, sorry, it's not option, it's output. Why am I why did I write option? So sorry, that's so weird. But anyway, you can see that WordPress is pretty smart, or it actually is not, because it gave us a positive answer without doing anything, without doing whatever we wanted to do. But that's because we just returned the output with the post remove, but whatever. So let's refresh again this page and let's actually delete the comic book now. There you go. Settings have been saved. We don't have anymore the list of comic book post type here in the list of custom post types. And if we access our database, we refresh and we check our Alicat plugin CPT option, we just have the product. Everything looks nice and simple. We have just one array with all the information. We remove the custom post type. Lovely. Now let's re-add once again the comic book because I want to do another test. And let's just give an archive and public and save the changes. Perfect. So we're using the same exact CPT sanitize callback method here in the case we're updating the option, storing a new option, or deleting a new option. But because we're using this unique if statement without any callback, we don't have an if else statement and blah, 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 we can just simply deal with the delete of this custom post type with just a bunch of lines of code, and we didn't code anything new. We're reusing the same type of form, we're using the same built-in settings field of WordPress, we're just passing a custom hidden field that carries the option of our custom post type, and we customize the delete. Perfect. So before concluding this tutorial, I want to just create a little bit of security option because this is really sketchy. I mean, we just have a button delete, and if the user accidentally clicks the buttons delete, it's going to delete the custom post type completely, and the custom post type removing this will not remove all the posts stored in the custom post type. So if the comic books has 20, 30, or even just one single post, this single comic will not be deleted. And we can deal with that if we want, but before actually allowing the user to delete the custom post type entirely, we should warn them. We should give them a little bit of an alert and say, hey, are you sure you want to delete this? Otherwise, let's not do it, because it could happen that a user accidentally clicks on this delete button. To do this, we can do it in 1,000 different ways. We can have a built-in form validation, and we can have a built-in alert written in JavaScript, ES6, or whatever, or we can use the easy way that is not the fanciest one that we cannot style, but it's really easy and it's super, super simple to apply. So let's do it. What I want to do, I want to simply create an on-click event to this delete, and if this event triggers, it will pop up a built-in alert confirmation message from the browser built in regular JavaScript that if the user says yes, will actually submit the form. If the user says, oh no, sorry, cancel, I did it by mistake, will not submit the form. So let's build that. So the first thing that we want to do, we want to add another option to the submit button that says on click, do something, call a JavaScript method or whatever we want to call. But how do we write this? Well, luckily the submit button allows for a fifth and final attribute that is actually an array list with all the attributes that we want to store in that specific button. So we can create an array, and inside an array we can have a full list of attributes that will be automatically applied to the button. So the attribute that we want to generate and I want to apply to the button is onClick, and it's a built-in HTML attribute that triggers whatever we're gonna specify here when the user clicks on the button. And as a second parameter of the onClick option, we can simply return directly a JavaScript method, a built-in JavaScript method to confirm if the user wants to delete the custom post type or not. So we can write return that this is JavaScript, and let's return whatever answer the user gives us from the built-in confirm JavaScript alert and semicolon at the end. And in the confirm, we can specify a custom message that we can ask for the user. So are you sure you want to delete this custom post type? The data associated with it will not be deleted, just to give it an alert. And that's it. Let's save it. Let's go back in our administration area. Let's refresh, and if we access the inspector and we check the button, now the button has this onClick method inside as stored in the HTML as a parameter that it's waiting for the returning of the confirmation. So now if we click on this button, look what happened. The form doesn't get submitted. We have this built-in alert that if you're using Firefox, Google Chrome, Safari, Opera, whatever, all these will be styled differently based on the style of the browser, but this is a confirmation alert of JavaScript, and it's asking the same text that we specified in the confirm, and if we click cancel, the answer will return false. So on click, if the return is false, nothing is happening. The submission of this form is interrupted. But if we say delete and click OK, the return is true, so the form will be submitted. And that's why our custom post type was deleted. And that's it. That was really, really simple, wasn't it? So this is not the prettiest thing ever, but this is just an example. Of course, if you want, you can style this stuff completely differently. So it's pretty much it for today's lesson. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, please give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. And if you want, you can check the support me page of my website, where you can find all different ways and methods to support me, support my channel, and help me to do better videos and better tutorials for you. Thank you again, guys, and until the next lesson, as usual, happy coding!